Okay, tax at the speed of now. I didn't pick the title of the talk, but I think it's a great name for what I'm about to present and what I'm about to show you, and it also coincides a lot with my interest. Maybe before we get started, a quick show of hands. How many of you hold a CFP degree in the room? Okay, quite a few of you. What about a CPA? Need to be careful with the CPAs. Okay, just a couple in the West sector there. I'll be careful and try to keep you all happy. Quick showdown about me. I'm Fernando. I come from Hazel, which is part of Altruist.com. It's a custodial platform. We're headquartered in LA. We have offices in San Francisco, which is what I work at, and also in Dallas, not so far away, I guess, from here. What I'm about to show you is my opinion and only my opinion, and talk to your financial your financial advisor. Do your own research and come to your own conclusions. And I'm here to give you ideas, maybe some suggestions, but definitely not advice. So you own your practice. You do what you think is best for you. Quick thing about myself here. So just to, I'm going to be here for the next couple of days. Hopefully we get a chance to talk in person. And just to give you a bit of a background, and maybe that's slightly different from the rest of the crowd, I am an electrical engineer. In case you couldn't tell from my accent, I know I sound like I'm from Ohio, but I'm actually from Spain. And I've been in the US for about 12 years. Couple of pictures that I wanted to show you. On the left, we have the Hazel team. This is at the San Francisco office. And there are about 12 of us in that photo. Now that the team is much larger, we're about 20 to 22. We're onboarding about 1 or 2 folks per week. And summer is particularly hectic. We're getting a few interns from different business schools. Here you can see Amanda and Nico. So that's also, this work wouldn't be possible with the Hazel team, none in this photo here. Just do a quick rundown of my experience. I was at Capital One, the big bank, for a couple of years. I was a data scientist manager. I've worked in treasury management. I was a director of engineering at Trovata, based in San Diego. We did treasury for enterprises like Etsy and Square and a few others. I co-founded a company called Campfire.ai. You guys can look it up. It's now a Series B company, has about 100 employees, and it was accounting. I was a CTO there. I also started a company called Time, which is what Eric mentioned, Time.ai. It's also part of the Y Combinator network. Our first employee was a CFP, and the company, in about a year after its existence, was acquired by Altruist. And that planted the seed of what today is Hazel, which is a bit of the product I'm going to be showcasing you today. What I want you to take away from this talk is not so much the Hazel product. Sure, you're more than welcome to use it. We'd love to have you. But it's more of the idea of how, if you use tax planning with clients and prospects, you can deepen relationships and win over those prospects. And the barrier to entry to how to do tax planning is now much lower thanks to tools like Hazel. I wanted to offer a quick perspective on how I see software and a bit of the world. I think we got to hear, and I'm sure throughout the rest of the day, we're going to hear the perspective of finance and investments. As a software engineer, I can tell you that we've witnessed this transformation, and maybe it's not so obvious until it's pointed out, going from a hardware-first world where you create devices, you create tools and gadgets, and you sort of hard code at a hardware layer the behavior that you want on those devices. We look at the BlackBerry, for example, and it's a great tool for texting, right? Texting like no other. It actually won the market doing texting. But the world kept evolving, and all of a sudden we were asking more and more things out of our phones. We wanted them to take photos and edit videos and maybe guide us through Google Maps. And it just wasn't a great tool for that. And, up came the iPhone and ate their entire cake, right? And this is just one example. You know, an iPhone changed the game because the UI that you get to experience is very different app to app. You can play a video game, you can edit a video, you can make a phone call, you can certainly text too. So the device sort of reinvents itself via software updates, sometimes on a daily basis. This happens not just in phones, this happens on cars with companies like Tesla. They've changed this game. And we've moved from this hardware, from devices being able to do one thing, to software, where you can change the behavior of the object on demand. And this sort of idea created the explosion of new companies and business models that we saw throughout the 2010s. Uber, I think, is a result of this. It's a software thinking to a transportation problem. We saw companies like Airbnb. I mean, there are a plethora that we could name here. And if you want to talk more about this topic, I have more to say. But this also resulted in the advisors world seeing the famous or infamous Kits' maps of technology. There are probably 200 to 300 solutions there. Some of them are very niche. Most of them don't talk to each other. And though one might say, well, it's a free market economy and you can compete on your own merit, certainly true. You end up with an amalgamation of tools that don't necessarily talk to each other, that are sometimes clunky. They're on different design systems and very different ethos. And we all see the limitations of this model of thinking, I believe, in this room. So the second argument that I want to make is that with AI, the game is changing now in a different way. We used to say in the 2010s, which is when I first came to the Bay Area, that software was eating the world. And now we see that AI is eating software. AI allows you to reimagine the tool. There is certainly, whenever there is a new technology that comes about, a changing world type of technology, there is always, I believe, this layer of hype that accompanies it. That might not necessarily be true, or it might be exaggerated, but nonetheless, today NVIDIA, which was once a graphics card company, is now the most valuable company on the planet. I've seen the change on software engineering too. It's changed how software engineers operate, and it's happened so quickly. I had never imagined that would come. The typical software engineer today spends most of their day thinking about its specifications and not so much on writing code. The heavy lifting of writing code is pushed very often to the machine. I see on companies like Law, Harvey, and even when I go to the doctor, all of my meetings are being transcribed now by the doctor so that I can access what did she say about the medication that I should be taking. Anthropic and OpenAI are both headed to IPO this year, and those are predicted to be massive IPO. So again, despite the maybe the hype that you might sense at time that the market is pushing, there is a very real technology here that's being unleashed effectively already today by thousands, if not millions, of professionals. I think it's also affecting the wealth industry. I think in our team, we often talk about this slide. This is one of the ones that I borrowed from the rest of the deck, the rest I put together. But I wanted to include this one. If we go back to the 1980s to the early 2000s, getting a financial advisor meant that you would get product access that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. So if you were working with an advisor, you could buy stocks, you could buy insurance products. That changed on after the year 2000 roughly, where advisors were doing more and more tax, estate, retirement planning. On to the next decade, 2015 to 2024, we moved into coaching, goals, family, and next generation, right? We understood the value of those items. And today, we believe there is this emergent persona of the AI-powered advisor, in where what's requested of you is so much greater. At the same time, there is a very real fee compression taking place. And the quality of what's expected in terms of throughput and quality of your work is ever so raising with increased competition. I think the good news of this is that some of these changes are paradoxical in that you would think by adding better brakes to a car that you decrease the number of accidents, and experience demonstrates that that's not always the case. People change the way they operate, and now they drive more poorly, and they actually cause more accidents than before. I think it's the same case here. By virtue of making maybe financial advice more accessible to folks, it's not that they'll use it less, it's that they'll use it more often. Maybe they want to talk to a financial advisor every week or even every day. So that's a bit of our opinion on how this industry is changing. I want to talk a bit more about taxes because that's what we came here to talk about. And I want to say it's a topic that, again, I didn't put the presentation name together, but I think it was a very apt name. This is what I do on my weekends when I'm not busy with other things. I created this visualization on my own. AI did help me a little bit. And what I wanted to showcase in this visualization is, well, if I'm making money working for a remote company, I'm an IT worker, maybe my household, I have here by default $240,000 of gross income. And I'm married, filing jointly. I have one dependent. Which state could I move in to pay the least amount of money in taxes. And I mean taxes very broadly. Taxes are not just income taxes. There are payroll taxes. There are property taxes, sales tax. So here I model a bunch of whether your wages come from W-2 or you're receiving interest or long-term capital gains. What are you living? Do you own? Do you rent? Do you want to live in a van? What is your annual consumption percentile-wise? Some states have property taxes on vehicles. Some states do not conform to HSA treatment. Some do not conform to 401k, like New Jersey. All of that is modeled here. And I think to nobody's surprise, we see the largest offenders here at the top of the list. But I just wanted to, if you want to access access the visualization, I'll give you access to it. But just wanted to showcase that this is something that I did out of my own free time on a weekend, just because I wanted to understand a bit more. Let me go back to the presentation. And the reason taxes are also, I think, a very important topic in the context of financial planning is that we estimate that for 100 million Americans, taxes are the largest single expense. And again, when I say taxes, I don't just mean income taxes. There is business tax, and there is payroll tax, and state tax, and I mean, the list goes on. And we see this pattern across world economies, or at least certainly Western economies, US, UK, Germany, Canada, where if you start from the 1925 up until 2025, the graph, it's actually up until 2020, I believe, even though the axis only shows 2005. We see that we started the century with maybe a share of GDP of government spending of maybe 10 to 20%. I think for the US, that number was about 12%. And now we are, at the beginning of the new century, with the US spending 42% of its GDP through government spending. The government is not productive by most metrics, so they need to raise that money from somewhere, from revenue. And at the end of the day, the economy is made out of people. Some people say, well, companies can pay taxes too. Companies at the end of the day are people. Either the consumer is paying or the employees are paying. And you couldn't probably just tell someone, hey, 42% of your paycheck is actually going to come to me every paycheck. That would be too easy, and most people would probably revolt if you told them that. That seems like an absurd, a large amount of money. So instead, what they've done, all these economies, again, I'm not picking the US here in particular, they've created this very complex machinery to take these 42% that they have to spend from regular folks, but they're doing it in a complex manner. And that's how we end up with a very broad in scope and very complicated with 50 different states, different regulations that are ever changing. If you were to put the US tax code in a room, it probably wouldn't fit in terms of number of papers. So it's beyond the reach of a person, or even machines up until recently. That's why understanding taxes and minimizing them is a great opportunity to deepen those relationships with your clients. The good news is that AI is here to help, and AI presents a very novel solution to this problem of taxes. And it builds on three important pillars for which the technology is ripe. The first one is document parsing. So most taxes are dealt with or are done in PDFs, traditional PDFs. And technology has evolved over time with things like OCR. And today we have models that are able to achieve a human or even superhuman performance on this document parsing. And you could say, how could you achieve a superhuman performance? Well, they add it by adding noise onto these documents and then having the machine read on a known truth basis, and then you can actually beat the human in some cases. So we have an engine in particular at Hazel that's able to parse your traditional document 1040s, 1099s. As long as the document follows some structure, we're able to ingest it. The second one is that we're able to research the code. So the good news is that the code is public, including public letter rulings. There are places that aggregate it for you, but at the end of the day, it is public. And we are able to, through LLMs, research and comb through the entirety of the tax code. And the last thing is that there is this known weakness of LLMs in which they're not great at math. Now, the good news for this is that while they're not good at math, they're excellent at writing code. And math is we could approximate math as a coding problem. And whenever there is a mathematical calculation, which, by the way, for the tax code, most of the calculations are fairly simple. We're not talking differential equations here. We're talking more compound interest, multiplication, and subtractions. And you can push that off to code that will run flawlessly and deterministically on a machine. Wanted to pause for a second and tell you that we launched Hazel at the beginning of September of 2025. I was on the biggest stage at the Future Proof conference in LA, Huntington Beach, and we launched there. And today we are working with firms like Ritholtz, Root, and Modern Capital. Ritholtz, I'm sure rings a bell for most of you, with about $6 billion of AUM. On average, and these numbers have been run by a compliance team, so they are conservative estimates because the compliance had to approve them. The average tax savings found per client is about $5,900, and it takes about 10 minutes to build a tax plan with Hazel. Now, really to the meaty part of this talk, which is since we launched tax plan, so the Hazel product launched in September, tax planning launched in February, and it created some market ripples. Eric was mentioning some market drops. We saw LPL and Schwab sort of react a bit, or the market reacting a bit aggressively about this. And what I've done is I've talked to, I lost count, but I think order of magnitude, I've talked to about 150 advisors on this topic now. I've gathered a lot of examples. They've shared anecdotes with me. And what I've worked over the last few days is a set of examples. Again, we have CFPs on the team that have also shared their experience of where does Hazel shine. This is really just a starting point. I encourage you to, again, try it for yourself. You can start a free trial and try out some of your examples. But I've tried to showcase the various possibilities that Hazel offers. Maybe before I go into the first example, the first thing I'll do is to tell you that when I open the Hazel website here for a second, I think you should be able to see. These examples work fairly simply. And again, I think my internet is a bit slow. So yeah. The way it will work is you can press on tax planning here. That's how you activate tax planning mode. Let me make this a bit bigger. You can drag on here a set of documents to get started. So if I have a couple of documents that I wanted to show, I can just put them here, and I can say something like, build me a tax plan for this household. Now, I'm not going to wait for each of them, and that's because it can take, depending on the size of documents, this can take a handful of minutes. But I'm going to show you the examples rather of each of these households and their situation. But that's how you would engage otherwise with the platform, and I'm going to show you the outcomes. So going back to the presentation here. Let's go by a relatively simple example to get the gears going. So let's meet the Smiths. We have Marcus and Elena. He works at Meridian Benefits Group, and she's a therapist, and they live in Florida. They live in Tampa. They have one child, Mateo, and their 2025 income is $161K. Which comes from a W-2 and practice income from Elena. They have no income tax. They're lucky enough. So dual income, one child, and they're in their prime earning years. Now, we could think that a household like this might do their taxes maybe using some off-the-shelf software. We can think of H&R Block, for example. And they've done their taxes, and they come to us, and they say, here is my more recent 1040s. Here are a couple of W-2s. And here is a 1099 also that I submitted. Their finances are rather simple. This is the information that Hazel is able to extract, and I'll show you, since this is the first example, show you very quickly how those documents look, just so that you'll see here that there is no copy. So we have a 1040 that we've filled out. All this information is obviously made up by me. The 900 does not exist for SSN, but we see all the figures laid out here in an official 1040 form. At the same token, elements like a 1099, I've created a realistic version of them with some interest and some boxes and what the APY is. Now, with this information, I'm going to go back here. Hazel is able to ingest all of it, match it to the household, and it's able to present to us 3 right off the bat opportunities that this household is not using. One of them is that Marcus is not maxing his IRA, and that would save him about $3,000 in taxes. He's not maxing his HSA. And the third opportunity is that they have a sizable portion of their assets in cash, which are yielding something like 4%, I think we saw. Problem is that that is taxed at their marginal tax bracket of 22%. If they were to switch to munis or some bonds that are tax efficient, they would save an additional $2,000. In just a few minutes and with a handful of documents, Hazel was able to save this client in particular, this household, more than $6,000, and was also able to match their employee match recovery on their retirement plan for an additional $700. You could say, well, this doesn't happen too often. People don't leave money on the table like that. I'll refrain from making, but this happens so commonly, and it happens to folks that I know in my team that pay their CPAs thousands of dollars to do their taxes, and they're very sophisticated individuals. Some of them have PhDs in physics, and they still leave this type of money on the table because the people putting together their returns are humans, and they're also humans, and they don't have the ability to go through 100 pages of documentation on their own to find these little opportunities. These alone almost pays the bill for what an advisor does on a year, certainly for half of what they do on a year. Again, I'm not going to pause on every example just because I don't have the time, but the flow is that I upload the documents, Hazel matches to the right household, so in case there are meeting notes that we have or emails that we've exchanged, all of that is taken into account when putting together these analyses. And right off the bat, Hazel is able to summarize, let me make this a bit bigger, summarize the main findings for the household. We can see here their tax returns. We try to make it as graphic as possible. So for example, if we're making federal tax brackets, we show you how much room you have left in the given tax bracket and all those things. Hazel can also generate artifacts. So if you want something like, which I ask here, can you generate a client-ready PDF so that I can walk over through this with my client? I could open that here. I'm going to do so here. Hazel can put together this type of PDF that says prepared by me for this client on this date, that contains nice graphics and visualizations about, again, what's going on in this household and how they could minimize which opportunities they could go over to minimize that tax liability. Okay, so the IRA utilization, the maxing the HSA contribution, where they are on the Roth IRA phase out, and the Alina story. Again, I have a number of examples, so I'll try to go through all of them, or at least most of them. Meet the Garcias. This is let's talk about a Roth conversion. This is the #1 strategy here advisors do. It's a Roth conversion. They're a couple. They are retired, 1962 and 1968. They have about $30K in interest plus dividends per year, and they have a Charles Schwab account with $3.7 million. They had a one-time gain of 185 in AGI in 2025, and they live in Colorado. They're recently retired, and they're not receiving any wages yet, so they're in a golden window for a Roth conversion. In this case, we have a 1040. We also have a Schwab statement, just a couple documents, and maybe a conversation that we've had with them. I could ask Hazel something like, can you plan out a Roth conversion strategy for the next several years? What Hazel does in this case, it understands the different trade-offs at play here. We could be a bit more aggressive. We could be a bit less aggressive. And it distinguishes in between the 3 phases that would dominate this Roth conversion. The next 3 years, where none of them are receiving Social Security. The next 5 or 6, when Gerald will be on Social Security. And the last one, where both of them will be on Social Security. Implementing this strategy means that the total wealth at 85 goes from 6.3 to $8.4 million, an extra $2 million. And the RMD era tax avoided is about $500,000. And again, without making these too awkward switching tabs, I wanted to show you the analysis here on the right, what the Roth conversion plan looks like. And the good thing here, we get a breakdown. Sorry, we get a breakdown here of the bond ladder that they have. And let me show you here. I think there was let me open actually the PDF, because I think it's covered there. If it will open. Yeah, there you go. Again, here in this PDF, we cover the plan for these Roth conversions. Well, we're trying to fill in that 22 and 24% marginal brackets. And here's the, what would happen in terms of lifetime tax comparison if they were utilizing this strategy. I believe there is also, the projected IRA balance by strategy. And again, the trade-offs if they were to do a more aggressive approach. So conservative, IRMA aware, so things like IRMA is also taken into account here, and the aggressive. I'm not going to go into detail. I wish I had the time, but if you want to pull me up and see these in detail, please let me know. They also have a sizable portfolio of bond maturities, and Hazel also takes that into account. Go back here. So we've seen so far, a simple case where folks have leaving money on the table and a Roth conversion, which I think is really the bread and butter of what a lot of advisors do on day-to-day. This is a bit more esoteric case, and also that one that's interesting because in this case, Hazel was not giving any documents to work off of. In this case, we have Robert. He's a widower. He has a estate in New York, which is $9 million. New York is infamous for estate handling. They have their own provisions, and if you hit certain amounts, then the entire basis becomes subject to that treatment, not just the marginal. He has one daughter, Anna, who's 47, and she lives in Texas. We could assume maybe right next here. Because this client, their estate is sizable, and maybe he has a bit of a, sorry, let's not call him a client, let's call him a prospect. Let's say that he's a bit also wary of maybe working with an advisor. He's maybe had a negative experience in the past and feels like, they're trying to take him for a ride. He's only giving us scarce information about his situation, but we know enough. We know that he lives in New York, has a $9 million estate, $8 million of which is in a traditional retirement account. He has one child in Texas, and he wants to move tax efficiently before he passes. So we want to model a few scenarios. What Hazel does here is research federal law when it comes to states, New York tax brackets, the New York treatment of estates, the Secure Act 10-year inheritance rule, which dictates that you need to withdraw the funds from the IRA, the following 10 years of receiving it, and the estate exemption, $50 million under the One Big Beautiful Bill. And the result is this, that if you do nothing and he passes, he'll be, combined in between his income tax, the New York estate tax, and then Anna's inherited IRA tax, they'll be in for a $5.6 million tax bill. They could do a Roth conversion, and they could do gifts and the hybrid strategy, which is recommended and detailed in the document. The effective tax rate goes from 62% to about 46%. And again, this example is interesting because we just work off of really a few sentences. There is not much more than that, and our own research on the problem. And I want to show you the result. See, so we have a traditional IRA, other assets, key parameters, the current year snapshot when it comes to taxes, and the 3 scenarios that we could do: status quo, moderate Roth, and aggressive Roth. This is why the aggressive strategy wins, and how we shift the tax liability between doing nothing and these 3 scenarios. So this would be the net wealth transfer to Anna. Again, this is just from 3 sentences, and this is something that you could present to a prospect after just a brief conversation, in the hopes of winning them over and making you look like the hero in the room. Let me go back again. We gotta be mindful of time here. This one is also interesting, case number 4, and it's interesting because it deals with cross-border taxes. We live in an increasingly globalized world. Folks move across countries and jurisdictions more and more often. My case in point being me. And this is another area where traditional software solutions and modeling becomes increasingly complex, right? Or it is not supported at all, actually. You think of someone that's maybe living in California in this case, and they want to retire in Canada, and they own a home and they have a sizable portfolio in a retirement account, and they want to know what they should do. Should they move to Canada right away? Should they delay moving to Canada? If so, by how much? Again, something that you think that the U.S. tax code is complex enough, now go international and add 1 or 2 other jurisdictions, maybe not even in English, and you're up for a surprise. In this case, what we have is also no documents, just a few hard points or hard data points on where they are, right? So they own a home. They're thinking about potentially selling it, and should they do a Roth conversion? Hazel is able to research the Canada-U.S. treaty. There is the Article 18, which prevents Social Security from being taxed on both sides. Section 121 for the home sale exclusion. RMD onset, cross-border stacking, all of that. So in the end, and this is a common misconception that, I'll move to Canada and then I'll pay less taxes. Actually, not often, not in our own anecdotal evidence. In this case, what ends up being optimal is that they should realize they should sell the home while they're California residents, and if they could, they should delay the moving to Canada by a few years while they do a Roth conversion. If they were to move to Canada, their tax bill would go from 82 to 172. So they would drop from a 41% marginal tax bracket to 31. Sorry, no, on the amount to convert on the Roth. I'll skip the document on this one if you want to come, just because I want to be mindful of time. But the same flow follows, and you get access to the artifact if you want to. This one is, again, they're all interesting in their own merit, but this one is interesting because I heard the anecdote of a prospect that was already working with a financial advisor, and the financial advisor has suggested that they do, in this case, the Doctora Maya, she's a psychiatrist, and she has a practice in Tennessee. And the existing financial advisor that's working with this household told her that she should create the simplified employee pension and max that out, and that would save them, about $50,000 worth of taxes. Now, what the advisor in question did here is he said, okay, well, I hear you that you're working already with an advisor, and he's suggesting that. Why don't you give me some documents, and I can see what I can do for you. Saving these $26,000 in tax with this employee pension plan. And what Hazel did in this case was to conclude that the coexistence of an SEP alongside a safe harbor 401k is, that's the IRS prevents that from happening. So you can do both things. That if you have a staff, you need to force the same percentage for every employee. So funding that 70K to herself, which means that she would owe much more in terms of employee matchup, and that it also prevents her from doing a backdoor Roth down the line because of the pro rata rule. So what Hazel identified, nonetheless, in this case, is that she could, because she's the owner, she could do a profit sharing on the 401k, and she could max that 401k on the employer side, her being also the employer. And get to the same deduction, get to the same bottom line, that $70,000 that she wanted to do, staying intact while minimizing those $20,000 in tax liability. So happy story here that even when you have experts that are working on cases, again, we're all humans and we make mistakes, and getting a double pass and an expert opinion on a topic usually tends to pan out. Didn't include a photo on this one. I should have, but this is the case of, again, we're coming up on the last 2 cases, and I want to make sure we're good on time. About 16 more minutes. Sorry, 1 second. I'm struggling today here. This is an pre-IPO employee, Priya Raman. She works at a company called Astra Dynamics in California, and she has incentive stock options, right? She has ISOs. She has a 172K salary and an RSU vesting, and is single in California. And the strike price of those options is $10, but the fair market value has gone up by 11x to 109. Before the company IPOs, there is typically a blackout period for about 180 days, for about 6 months. And in this case, what the advisor is trying to do is how many of the ISOs should she exercise out of the grant that she was given at that strike price without triggering AMT, right? The challenge with these pre-IPOs is that you have the blackout period. You want to exercise as many ISOs as you can today, but you don't want to exercise too many because you may trip AMT and end up paying a lot of money in taxes. So in this case, what we gave Hazel was a statement with the RSU vesting schedule, and again, that fair market value and the strike price. And Hazel was able to conclude that out of the, I believe it was like 4,800 shares that she was given, or ISOs, that she should exercise now about 2,307, which would put her under the AMT breakdown or limit, and that once the company goes public, then those ISO will be automatically converted. This one is interesting. I'll show you how that looks on. Sorry, give me 1 second. Hope I didn't close. No, how can it be? Sorry, give me 1 second because I hope oh, there you go. It's because it's maximized. Let me go back to the IPO topic. And here what we see is, again, we see a full analysis. The document that we submitted, I'm going to show you here just so that you can see. Oh, man. Yeah, so we get a document that outlines the security and, again, the strike price, the change, RSUs, ISO. So this combination here of RSUs, ISOs, and RSUs, and what the summary is and what the vesting summary is. So how many units are happening. Again, this is all fictitious account holder and everything. But just with that document, Hazel is able to put together what the projected AGI would be for the year, and what the AMT exemption is, and what would make her stay under that exemption. Again, I like to show the document output because I think this is a nice deliverable that you could give to a client that shows that you've worked on the case, and again, what the strategy is. There is also a bit of room here for error. So what Hazel suggests is that you don't exercise just until the last share, but that you give a bit of margin just in case unexpected revenue hits or income hits, and then that puts you over the threshold for AMT. And now we are entering our last case. Sorry, actually, before I go into the last case, in this case, we also asked Hazel, given that the window of opportunity was really small, to draft an email to the client telling her about what the strategy is and what strategy we should employ, and that she really has only a few days to act. The last case I wanted to bring up has to do with a business, has to do with a C Corp in Texas, 1981 C Corp. Has a fair market value of about $18 million with a built-in gate on 15.5, some of which trapped in a building, which is fully depreciated, and some of it in a stock portfolio under the C Corp. The owner of the C Corp passed away, and now the two owners are Mark and Laura. They're 50% owners. They're siblings, and they want out of the corporation. In this case, what I'm trying to showcase is that Hazel can. We've talked about international. We talked about estates. We talked about Roth conversions. Hazel can also work with business returns. And when you have a C Corp exit, there are many considerations at play. This can get hairy and complex really quickly. Hazel, nonetheless, was able to present, in this case, 12 different strategies that you could employ to exit these two siblings out of the C Corp, from convert to an S Corp, to a 1031, to convert to a personal holding company, and so on. Hazel was able to simulate all of the strategies, and again come up with, in this case, a hybrid strategy that Hazel called strategy number 9, which saves about $3.37 million in taxes versus the straight C Corp liquidation. I think the recommended path is to elect into a C Corp, S Corp, sell the building, and hold through the 5-year window, while strategy number 12 is the max deferral, and this one is a 1031 plus the X election and the 5-year hold. So if you ever have questions about businesses exit or business plans, S-Corps, Hazel can also work with that. The last 2 points I wanted to talk about are everything that I talked about would be completely irrelevant if we weren't safeguarding your data with the utmost care. And being part of Altruist gives us that legitimacy. We are a custodial that holds tens of billions of dollars in assets under management. We have a very strict, we have a CISO, and we have a very strict security policies. So we're SOC 2 certified, things like server-side encryption, AS256. We also have zero data retention. So even though we work with some of these LLM providers, large language models, and I know that spooks some of the folks, we do have a contract with them that enforces zero data retention, which means they don't retain the data that we send them beyond the time of processing and sending us back that request. So say one of these providers were to be hacked, they wouldn't be able to leak any of the uses that you've been making of Hazel because they simply do not retain the data. An engineer there can also look at what we're using the platform for.
How are you validating the data?
We have a contract signed in place with them. It's the same that I validate that Microsoft is honoring their agreements. I can go into their servers, but if they tell me that and they have an oversight and they have auditors, then I have to trust that. But yeah, there is a layer of trust obviously that we have to apply, but they've signed that as companies that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars. What I wanted to also show you is a couple more things on Hazel that I think elevate the power. One of them is that it connects to the most commonly used tools in the financial advisory industry. And let me see, because my internet is struggling a little bit here. But we connect to calendar and email, main providers there. We connect to also main CRMs like Redtail, Wealthbox, Salesforce, and HubSpot. We also connect to the Altruist custodial platform, and that information is used when you request data to Hazel. So we can see here on the integrations panel some of the tools that we connect to. More to come. We're never going to be done with integrations. In 10 years from now, we're still going to be working on them, but we think we have fairly good coverage today. There are also ways that you can change how Hazel operates. So when you start a tax mode chat, you can have a set of instructions that play here. So if you like to do things a certain way, you absolutely don't want to do certain things, you like your tone in a certain way, you can express all of that here. You can also create what we call modes. And similarly, modes, you can specify detailed instruction set. You could also give it complementary documents, say PDFs to complement an analysis, or for the LLM to have as context. Hazel is also a note taker. So we think of this as table stakes, but we are also cognizant that a lot of the interactions between advisors and client happen in the context of meetings, and being part of those meetings and taking accurate notes. It's an important part of what advisors do. So you can, if you are to use Hazel, then you'll have the note taker functionality, and after every meeting, we craft a set of detailed notes. If you so wish, you also have access to the video recording and the transcript of the meeting. We're actually now working on a performance metric tab, and it's a bit of a coaching tool that tells me how well am I doing on listening, what is the longest monologue. You typically want to see clients going on long monologues, because that gives us a lot of information. It also signals to us that they're comfortable sharing their stories. So interactivity, patience, how long am I waiting after I'm asked a question to really internalize that question? And we're benchmarking these metrics against the rest of the folks in the firm. We also take a snapshot at the emotion that dominated certain sections of the meeting. So when we were talking about investment, what were some of the emotions that surfaced during that side? Were they confident? Were they anxious? Were they reassured? All of that is being kept track of here. That really brings me to a couple more closing remarks. One of them is that again, that team of 22 people I showed you before, or I guess it was 12 in that photo, we're not stopping anytime soon. The next experience that we're working on is our financial planning agent. So we talked about tax planning. We are working and scheduled to release later during the summer this financial planning experience in where, again, by using those pillars of document parsing and math execution, we could do things like Monte Carlo simulations too. You could give us a snapshot of how a household is doing. In fact, we could compute that snapshot based on the interactions that you've had with a household. And then Hazel will be able to put together a financial plan given their circumstances. So understand their goals, understand where they're at today, and what is a strategy to close that gap in between where they are today and the goals they want to achieve. So stay tuned for later on this summer, we're going to be launching this. And really the last thing I wanted to say is that if you want to get started, that you can go to hazel.ai today, open an account. We don't require that you put in your credit card details, and you'll get a 2-week trial to test out the product for yourself and build that opinion that I was talking at the beginning. It's really all I had to say on the topic. I'm going to be here for the next couple of days, so please, if you want to come talk to me about any of these topics, I'd love to. And thanks for having me.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Hey, guys, we're going to take a break. Let's try to keep it under 10 minutes. But I just wanted to point out to you before, those of you that are CFP, there's a sign-up sheet that's going around for CE credits.